a life-changing thing happened for someone, but then it turned sour and they labeled it as like demonic. And I was like, oh, interesting. So they are in a state of reaction. I triggered them.
Them hold out their arms, and then you kind of pressed on their arms, and you were asking them like, do you believe that you can make a certain amount of money?
Yeah.
And their arms were strong. And then you kept going up. And then once it hit a certain threshold, you asked them, you pressed on their arms, and their arms were weak.
Yeah.
And
so it's kind of like a lie detector test. And it's called clinical kinesiology or muscle testing. And what you're looking for are micro changes in the body. So the moment you go into a fight or a flight, your body sends the signal that is the fight flight. And when you're in that state, you're in a momentary moment of weakness. Just really quick though. So it's a very fast hit. It's not a thought process, it's a chemical process that drops you into a state of weakness. So you could take someone and you could hold out their arm and just say, hold strong, hold strong, hold strong, and get a good stable strength test. So it's like, okay, this person's strong. This is the normal. I'm going to push this hard. You resist. And then you can have them just hear things. They don't even have to say it. But the moment they hear it, they get the trigger and then they'll drop. So we look for those drops because that's the actual physiological response that's going on. And you could say things like, I'm capable of making $100,000 a month. I'm capable of making 150,000, capable of 200. And you'll see that somebody who has very logic and they're like, I'm certainly capable, they'll be strong up to as much as you do. Like, oh, I'm capable of 1 million. I'm capable of 3 million. They'll be strong. They'll be like, I'm capable. Then you switch the word. I'm worthy of making this. And all of a sudden, boom, they'll drop into weakness. Or I'm ready for this. Or now's the time. Or I have the systems in place. Or I can do this. Or I have the support. Or this is easy. I don't have to sacrifice my family for this. And each one will get a different response. Now, the moment they drop into weakness, that's good for me because I'm like, sweet, let's change that. Like, that's the addiction or allergy. Let's get you into a state of power. And going through what's called the cellular alignment technique, which is the series of breathing and panting and smiling, it changes the physiological response, gets rid of the trigger and the fight flight. So then you test it again right after you do it. And it takes like 2 minutes each one. And then you go through and they'll be strong. Like, I can do this. I'm capable. I'm ready. I'm worthy. I'm deserving. I'm good enough. I deserve this. I can do it. I have the support in place. I can come up with the systems. I can do it now. I don't have to procrastinate. And all of a sudden they'll be certain. It's getting them into a state of certainty in their body. And it's funny because communication is like 7% words. 93% is through body language and tone. So we're picking up on the 93% that is not just spoken, but it's felt. And yeah, that's what we're looking for.
It's so cool. And it does, like, anybody that's listening to this that thinks this is woo-woo, like, I guess I'm more woo-woo these days than I've ever have been, but
definitely,
yeah, I might. But dude, Tyler did this on me.
Well, I love. Let me talk to that. Here's what's woo-woo to me. What's woo-woo is somebody going in circles for 40 freaking years, struggling with something over and over and over, doing the same thing, thinking that they're going to change.
Right.
That to me seems stupid.
It is.
And it seems a little woo-woo.
Yeah.
Like, me, I'm like, that's just dumb. Why would somebody choose to be stuck, especially after learning something, and then stay in ignorance? So woo-woo is a fascinating thing because all woo-woo represents is a state of unknowingness that counters what we know. And as soon as something shines light on it, there's a moment of like guard that comes up. Like, oh my gosh, like think of Chat GPT. As soon as that rolled out and AI, so many people were like, oh my gosh, this is gonna like, somewhere of the philosophy, this is gonna be horrible. It's gonna conquer the world and gonna take all of our information and
eventually. Yeah.
And eventually gonna do that, right?
Not yet.
And then others are like, holy crap, here's a way that I can use to make 10x my income, get things faster, be more certain, and get things a lot quicker. So everything's just a tool. But how you perceive the tool becomes woo-woo, or it becomes something that gets you something and you're like, woohoo, like this is awesome, I'm gonna like crush this out. So that's how I look at all things. It's like anytime we think something's woo, it's because we're ignorant. We haven't had enough information or had a result with it yet.
I love it.
Can I ask one thing about that? So with Mr. Jason asking, and I probably would have said something similar, we have to justify it potentially being woo-woo because they may consider us woo-woo, right? What's behind that? Like, what's what's going on there?
Well, you're getting to the deeper stuff here. So like when somebody actually, I never feel like anything's woo-woo because I understand patterns and how people respond. Someone who does though represents, I've had a past pain on something that I didn't understand, and now I have to label it as woo-woo to protect myself from getting taken advantage of, getting hurt, or some sort of next level pain. So everything literally is either a addiction or an allergy. And you look at that, and so if somebody's response is really defensive or labeling it, the only reason they could do that is because of some past experience that would give them reason to do so based on a past pain. Their body's just trying to keep them safe. So I don't ever judge them. I just look at it and be like, cool, you want to change?
Like somebody messed with them about doing something like that. So now to protect, and I'm not saying this is what you're doing, Jason. I'm just, that's crazy.
One time I was teaching a bunch of real estate people and somebody thought I was like doing something of the devil. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And, there's like this Christian group. And I teach Christians all the time. I'm a Christian. And like, I'm teaching all the science behind this. Like, here's the tapping. You want to trigger it. And while you tap it, you're actually triggering the fight flight itself. And every conscious overrides the unconscious. So when you go through the science of it, it makes more sense. And now instead of it being woo-woo, it's like you can strategically create miracles in your life because now you don't have to like just be passive about everything. And they're like, man, you're tapping into sources of the devil. And I was like, okay, interesting. And my thought was, this person has had some sort of situation or circumstance where a life-changing thing happened for someone, but then it turned sour and they labeled it as like demonic. And I was like, oh, interesting. So they are in a state of reaction. I triggered them, which I teach. Every single trigger is a transformation waiting to be taken. But if you don't see the trigger as that, then people become victims to words, people, money. And the key is to allow these triggers to change you. So it's just a past perception from someone based on a previous pain, which is an addiction. And then you get rid of that. Now you can consciously choose, not driven by fear or a past experience.
So cool. Have you heard of EMDR therapy?
Oh yeah. Dude, I've done almost 650 different processes.
Yeah.
And put in almost $1 million into different things.
Oh.
EMDR is awesome. It's really good for PTSD. It's good at shifting because what it does is that the eye movements is a pattern disrupt and it changes how your brain works. Now, the thing about what I do and why it's different than any other process is because you're not working on allergies and addictions. You're working on past traumas that could be stored as an addiction. But if you simply neutralize it, but you don't get rid of the addictive behavior that's holding it, then you'll attract another event similar to it to cause another one to happen. So I teach that it's not just about getting to the root cause and getting rid of the past traumas. That's old stuff. And I think it's like scraping two stones together trying to create fire. It works, but it's freaking slow. But if you had a flamethrower and you could just torch the thing and get rid of it or shift it and do it, and you don't have to know why or who or bring up the trauma, like, why not do that? So it's a whole different philosophy. It's all based on allergies and addictions. People are literally addicted to the struggle and allergic to the successes. And when you can pinpoint those and rewire yourself, now it's out of choice instead of out of reactions.
I love it. It's so true. And it works. Again,
I love all the techniques. Like, they helped me get to where I am, but I'm just all about the fastest, most effective ways. Like, get there quick, shift it, get the result.
I mean, I would almost say, like, if somebody's done EMDR, it's like there's other techniques that are similar that have been proven to work. So, I mean, this is not something that's mystical. Or I know when I first heard what you did, I was like, I don't know. I don't get it. You know what I mean? I kind of went to that. When I say woo-woo, everything that's good that's happened to me has been woo-woo.
Or labeled woo-woo by the regular.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the cool thing is, I think we're getting into a culture where things aren't as weird anymore. And the least,
well, like, because it is so weird.
Yeah. And to me,
right now,
I'd rather see, like, what's the weirdest thing is the struggles. Like, that's way weirder to me now. Like, I would rather do processes and techniques to get results and change than to stay stuck out of fear or uncertainty. That's weird, you know? So it's all about changing that. And the more we can teach in a way that empowers people and, you know, shines light on ignorance and helping people get out of that and into a state of just test it, go try it, go experience it, go Get your results, go get enough evidence that counters all your past addictions and allergies so that finally you can be free and go create what you want without all the resistance.
I think probably the hardest, or one of the hardest things for everybody, is in these moments and situations where pre-trigger, right? Pre-trigger, then trigger. And at trigger, it's now too late, right? And I think that there's number one, where nobody's taught any of this stuff ever, right? It should be like part of the freaking handbook when you're born, but it's not. And maybe it will be, but like being able to, number one, be aware that those triggers are even there, right? Like I didn't even know for years and years that being triggered. And then, oh, wow. Okay. Now I'll admit that it is me. It's not anybody else, right? It's me. I get it. Now I understand that. Now it's, holy shit, now is really the work, right? That's like up to the point where you admit it is just friggin' you're on autopilot. Yeah. And now it's like you're awake. Now you see it. And then everything starts, you're like, oh man, what, like as you see the things and you're observing, but then moving from that to being able to notice it as it's about to happen, I think is why they call it practice, right? Like to be able to get to there.
If you have a tool to change that trigger, now it doesn't become a hard thing at all. It's just I love triggers. I look for triggers in my life. Anytime my wife triggers me, I get excited. I'm like, sweet, here's an opportunity for me to grow. Why? Because here's what happens. If somebody's here and let's say financially, they want to, maybe it's hitting that first $1 million or keeping the first $1 million or whatever it might be. Whatever that goal is, the moment someone sets a goal that's beyond them, the game begins. And the game begins before, during, and after. So it's the space between. So when I am coaching people to go get their goals, what most people will do is this. They're like, sweet, I'm gonna go make $100,000 or whatever, $1 million. And then they're going for it, and then they're like, oh yeah, and I gotta go do this thing, and oh, this new software, and I'm over here. And they're like all over the freaking world. Like where are you going? What are you doing? And like 40 years go by and you're like, what's your goal? Like, oh yeah, it's this over here. So this happens because of avoidance of pain. We're avoiding pain. So what happens is going to this goal, if you want to get to this goal as fast as humanly possible, you have to be able to confront and change pain as fast as humanly possible. Anytime that you've had some sort of past disconnect, maybe it's represented by these, like here's a circle, here's a square, here's a triangle, and these are all things that are not ideal. It's because in your past, you've had some sort of disconnection or pain. And going and getting your goal is a way for you to confront these things. But you have to confront this to become the person capable of handling this goal. If you don't change and you just get the goal, then you're gonna lose something of equal value. That's why people get the goal, they lose their marriage. They get the goal, they lose their health. They do something and something else of equal value drops off because they didn't change. They just forced it. They just willed it, right? The goal to me is never to get the goal. It's not about the attaining of the goal. It's about the becomingness along the journey. Because if I can transform my triggers, which each one of these are a trigger, and I can say, cool, I'm gonna confront this, shift it, confront this, shift it, confront this, shift it. Now I'll get my goal, but I will be someone and act and handle stress and handle responsibility in a completely new way because I'm not my old self. I've allowed the goal and the resistance between the goal to change me. Now when I attain the goal, I can have it all. And then you start over with the next thing. So part of life is about constant growth. But if we're only goal seeking and it's out of ego, like, hey, I need to attain this goal so that I can finally feel good enough. So I can finally feel like I deserve something. So I can finally feel safe. So I can have the security. Then those are the triggers and they're always gonna show up at your next goal.
You're justifying feeling shitty by saying the good things around the corner when I finally get there. That never gets there because you don't do the stuff you need to get there. It's interesting on that graph, like where you're saying you're leveling up along the way, there's a whole other thing that plays in with that, right? It is being present. Like you're present instead of future focused on this thing that is bullshit anyway, right?
Yep.
So it's pretty amazing. Like it's like all the stuff is coming together here, you know? Thank you, Tyler. It's been awesome. So good to know you. And pick up that book, everybody. What are you doing? Why are you talking to us?